everyone, it is Gail from Ticket to Anywhere. It is Friday, so you know what that means. It is time for another edition of Friday Fragment. My plan was going to be to read an excerpt from this book, which is Clarity by Kim Harrington, which was released on March 1st. See, I even dressed the part. I wore the fern t-shirt that I had made. Let's see, get a better view of it. For her launch party, which was this past Saturday, and I have recapped on my blog. So be sure to check that out. There are videos of her reading from Clarity as well as her journey to authordom. But yeah, so I was going to do an excerpt from this book because I loved it so much. But then when I was putting in some older Friday fragments on James's blog, because this is hosted by James over at booksheetclub.blogspot.com, and this is an official Friday week, and so all the links go there. I learned that he did an excerpt from this book. So James, you suck. You stole my choice, and this sent me kind of in a tizzy. Well, not in a tizzy, but it, I don't know. I had to go and find something else because James sucks. So if you want to listen to an excerpt of Clarity, head over to James's blog. And in the meantime, I'm going to read something else. I thought about doing something from my current read, which is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. But I am about 122 pages in, and right now I am just not feeling the love of this book. I'll sit and I'll read, and a lot of time will pass, and then I look at my last Goodreads updates, and I find that I've only read 10 pages. So this is very slow going. I'm going to give it, though, up until this big bookmark here, which is the halfway point. I need that visual aid reminder, because there are 12,000 people on Goodreads that have combined given this book a 4.5 star rating. And that is saying a lot, especially on Goodreads. So hopefully in the next 200 or so pages, this will pick up. But right now, it puts me to sleep. So then I started thinking about other books I could do, and it was really hard. And so I decided instead to go to this book, which is Incorrigable. I just finished this one earlier this week. It's a middle grade book from Stephanie Burgis. I believe it is already out in the UK. I think that came out in 2010 there. And takes place in 1803 England, and as I said, it's middle grade, so the main character is 12 years old. Her name is Catherine, but her family calls her Cat. And she is a true little sister, totally misunderstood, treated like she doesn't know anything. I, as the youngest of three, totally related to Kat and how her siblings treated her. They are just so unfair half the time. But yeah, I really liked this book. I thought it was really humorous, and if I was 12 years old, then I know that this would have been an absolute favorite of mine. But yeah, I liked it, and I look forward to the next ones. And my excerpt comes from the beginning. I believe it's right in chapter 2. Before I do that, I just have to read the first line because I absolutely adored it. It says, I was 12 years of age when I chopped off my hair, dressed as a boy, and set off to save my family from impending ruin. I made it almost to the end of my front garden. And so I just thought that was really cute. And that was the first opening line. But now that, I rambled for 4 minutes, I'm actually going to read my fragment before I lose all my viewers. So again, this is from chapter 2. I was concentrating so hard I didn't even notice the footsteps coming toward me from the garden. Okay. Sorry. I messed up. Okay. I was concentrating so hard I didn't even notice the footsteps coming toward me from the graveyard. The first I knew of it was when my stocking feet, swinging in the air, brushed right against a man's beaver hat and knocked it to the grass. I almost fell off my branch in surprise. Both of Mama's diaries dropped from my hands 6 feet down onto the grass, next to a moving pair of dirt-covered Hessian boots. My gaze went up past the boots, up mud-spattered pantaloons and dark blue coat that looked like it had once been expensive before it had been all covered in dirt. The man who wore the clothes and the dirt was a complete stranger. "Who are you?" I asked. The words blurted themselves out of my mouth. If Angeline had been there, she would have said something smooth and courteous and subtly amusing in greeting. If Alyssa had been there, she would have been too proper to speak to a strange gentleman at all without a proper introduction. Then again, neither of my sisters would have been caught off guard in the first place by sitting in a tree without her shoes on. The man underneath me had kept walking forward even after I kicked his hat off. He hadn't even paused to look up at me or to pick up his hat. But when I spoke, he stopped walking and shook himself, as if we were shaking off a cloud of gnats. "I am Frederick Carlyle," he said in a strange, flat voice. He was still looking straight ahead at the vicarage, so I couldn't see his face, only the back of his dark blonde hair. He was dressed like a gentleman, but from the look of his hair, not to mention the state of his clothing, it had been some time since he had seen a valet or a comb. "Here to study with Miss Angeline Stevenson's father," he said. With Papa? Mr. Stevenson?" He didn't turn. "Here to study with Miss Angeline Stevenson's father," he repeated. "I have brought my first quarter's payment with me." Good?" I slid down off the tree. It was awkward, since I couldn't let my skirts right up in front of him. I landed hard on a sharp stone, stumbled, and barely missed stepping on Mama's books. I snatched them up and tried to flatten the crumpled pages with one hand. Later, I would probably panic about the damage, but right now I was too curious to feel scared. "How do you know Angeline?" I asked the back of the gentleman's head. He swung around, and I saw his face for the first time. It was alight with hope. "Is Miss Angeline truly here? Are you Miss Angeline?" "No," I said. "Of course not. I'm just Cat." I stared at him. He was young, about the same age as Charles, I thought, so probably no more than 20. Handsome, too, I supposed, if he hadn't looked so vacant. I frowned, looking at his blank blue eyes. Maybe vacant wasn't the right word, after all. Maybe entranced would be more accurate. Something about that started an ominous tugging in the back of my mind. Entrance. But before I could think it through, I heard a rattling sound behind me, and something worse. Familiar voices floating through the air. I spun around. Oh, the devil! I had been the one too entranced to think straight. I hadn't been keeping my lookout. Stepmama's gig was on the road just beneath us, less than 2 minutes' drive away. Even as I watched, it turned into the final curve. The full implications hit me with a thud. I stared down at the books in my hands. Half the pages had been bent in the fall, and the whole middle section of the first diary was crumpled. Even if I put the books back exactly where I'd found them, Angeline would never be fooled. She would know the moment she opened them what had happened. I wonder if it was too late to run away after all. The boys' clothes were still in the attic, where I'd left them. Maybe if everyone else was absorbed in greeting our strange visitor, they wouldn't even notice I was missing. And this Frederick Carlyle, or whoever he might be, certainly seemed to be excited about meeting Angeline. So that should distract her, at least for a little while, till... "Is Miss Angeline in that gig?" he said hopefully. "Yes," I said unhappily. "So I really need to go and..." "No, wait! She'll be here in just a moment. You don't need to go chasing after her, Mr. Carlyle. Mr. Carlyle, stop!" I threw myself in front of him to hold him back. He walked straight into my raised arm, heading for the hedge around our garden that overlooked the road, a full 15 feet below. "It's too high," I said. "You'll break your legs if you jump that. What's your hurry anyway? It's not as if you've ever met her, so..." Oh! Suddenly it all clicked into place. Mama's magic books tingled in my hands as I regarded them with newfound respect. "Miss Angeline Stevenson," Frederick Carlyle murmured. He sounded like a bleeding calf being led to the slaughter, but a blissful smile curved his lips. Now I knew why he seemed entranced. "Come inside," I said smoothly. "Why don't I bring you a cup of tea? Then you can brush yourself off before you meet Angeline. You want to make a good impression on her, don't you?" He frowned as if it were a difficult concept to grasp. "Miss Angeline is coming here, inside this house?" "She is," I said. "I'll show you in. I want to be there with you when she arrives." I couldn't hide the books from Angeline, or keep her from finding out that I looked at them, but I had something better than secrecy now. I had the perfect opportunity for blackmail. And so that's a little bit from Cat Incorrigible. Again, I highly recommend this book. It comes out early April from Athenaeum. So, hope you enjoyed that Friday Fragment, and be sure to let me know what you're reading. Until next week, bye!